recognizing and meeting this moment as well. In addition, I want to thank Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We had a very long conversation today, talk about meeting the moment. We're so blessed to have her leadership in California. She's very familiar to Northern California and certainly familiar to me as the former mayor of San Francisco. Our conversation was not only about what she has done and what is being done in the Senate as we speak, but what will be needed over the course of the next number of months as we come back, as we recover, as we will. This is not a permanent state. This is a moment in time. And we will meet this moment together, and we will look back at these kinds of decisions as pivotal decisions. If we're to be criticized at this moment, let us be criticized for taking this moment seriously. Let us be criticized for going full force and meeting this virus head on. We're doing so today in the state of California through this order, and we're doing so by continuing to build collaboration and partnership across every level of government and the private sector. Let me conclude by just making a few points to fill in that. We had today a very important conversation. It was punctuated earlier today by President Trump in his press conference with the CEO of Gilead. It's a California-based company around treatments. I want to compliment the president in his focus on treatments. It is a focus of positivity as we work to bridge towards a vaccine. It was a very encouraging conversation. It's a conversation that we can have with many other CEOs of companies, not just in the state of California, but for that matter around the rest of this country and around the rest of the world. There are treatments in trial. Our UC system, all 5 hospitals are already actively engaged in those treatments and the courses that are part of some of these antivirals and some of these medicines that you have all learned about today because of the president's announcement. That's very encouraging, and we want to continue to build capacity and to build partnerships. Along those lines, we are working to build capacity and partnerships to get more protective gear in the state of California. You've all been seeing headlines. Some of them we've driven by our own anxieties in that space, others by their own limitations of access and gowns and gloves, glasses, and other protective gear. Here's the good news in the state of California. I was talking to the Vice President and the President today, thanking them for the first national stockpile transfer of assets that we just received, where we received quite literally hundreds of thousands of gloves and face masks, not just N95, but also surgical masks. And we're going to be starting to get that cache of assets out into our diverse communities throughout the state of California. Many of you know we had our own cache, we had our own storage of N95 masks. We still have 10 million of those masks, and we are getting them out in real time. We started with 21 million. We have about 10 million still as we distribute those. We've distributed those first 11 to 55 counties in the state, and we'll continue to get those N95 masks out there. And we recognize that distribution can't happen fast enough. We also talked to a well-known entrepreneur today around ventilators. As many of you know that have followed our press conferences here in the state, we have 7,587 ventilators in our hospital system. We have 514 through a cache at the Department of Public Health that are being repurposed. We have an additional 200 in our EMSA cache that we are repurposing, and then we ordered an additional 200. But we're going to need to increase the manufacturing of those ventilators, and we are working with the private sector and well-known entrepreneurs to consider to help us in that respect as well, starting to repurpose some of the manufacturing in the state to meet the moment, particularly to prepare for our seniors and others that may need that support. So again, this is a difficult moment, and this is one that I know is filled with deep anxiety as a father, as a husband, as a parent of 4 young kids, to families in particular, to folks that have had to drop their kids, no longer drop off at school, but now are living with their kids 24/7, putting together, learning plans, trying to figure out, the nomenclature of what their 7th grade science teacher understands. And I think all of us are coming to appreciate our teachers. We're all coming to appreciate each other, I think, a little bit more. We don't see this through the lens of rural, urban. We certainly don't see it through the lens of a Republican and Democrat. I think we're all human beings, deeply capable of loving one another, meeting this moment, and beginning to love ourselves enough to recognize that it's our individual decisions that are going to determine our capacity moving forward. COVID19.ca.gov. COVID19.ca.gov is a site we put up to provide information. We'll be putting more detailed information out in the next hours and days about the exemptions to the stay-at-home order. But again, for those living in many of the Northern Californians already impacted, you're very familiar with those exemptions. And for those of you who are not, again, we're going to keep the grocery stores open. We're going to make sure that you're getting critical medical supplies. You can still take your kids outside practicing common sense and social distancing. You can still walk your dog. You can still pick up that food at one of our distribution centers, at a restaurant, at a drive-through. All of those things we will still be able to do. And to secure that, in closing, I want folks to know that we've lost a lot of volunteers that simply are concerned and understandably are staying at home. And our food banks and others that have relied on volunteers and the community spirit need a little support. And so we're going to provide that support. This shouldn't be alarming. It's humanitarian only, but we'll send out about 500 of our extraordinary leaders in the National Guard to help with the distribution and the food, again, just purely humanitarian. And we'll be announcing some very, very exciting partnerships with social media companies like Nextdoor to provide kits, information, Q&As to, start to check in on loved ones, check in on your neighbors, things that you need, one-pagers so you know what kind of things you need at home to protect yourself. Those that are socially isolated, our seniors struggling with loneliness as much or more than anything else, to make sure we reach out, maybe call 5 people a day, just check in on them. So we've got a whole kit we put out with that social media company, and we're going to be doing more with AmeriCorps and Conservation Corp in the state of California. All of this in the spirit of meeting the moment, including the spirit of reaching out, those that are healthy, young, those that can make an appointment, be socially appropriate in terms of their distancing, to get a blood drawn to help those in needs. Our blood banks need support. Interestingly, we are not able to provide, because we're not doing the large blood draws and fairs, the kind of capacity we've seen in the past. The good news about the social isolation, in some respects, the need in the short term has gone down, so it shouldn't be alarming, but we want to meet the moment if indeed our blood banks need additional resources as well. So again, it's a spirit of the moment, stepping up, stepping in, recognizing our own individual capacity to meet this moment, not just relying on others, doing it safe and thoughtfully. And again, I just cannot express more appreciation for the collaborative spirit that has defined this moment across agencies, across jurisdictions, across this country, into the White House, the Pentagon, Health and Human Service agencies across this country, sharing best practices across state, and of course the CDC and their leadership. So with that, we're here to answer any questions. I've got a team assembled behind me, and I thank all of you in the state of California for recognizing this moment and meeting it.
First question, Sophia Balog.